Now at 11, breaking news. Traffic jammed on the 5 freeway in Santa Clarita after a high-speed chase that went on for hours. The CBS 2 News team is here, and that CHP pursuit is our top story. That chase lasted nearly 3 hours and finally ended near Magic Mountain. Officers say they tried to stop the driver for speeding in El Cajon around 7:30, but she took off. She eventually hit the 5 freeway and led CHP from San Diego County into Orange County and through Los Angeles. It all came to an end when the car ran out of gas in Santa Clarita. She wouldn't come out on her own, so officers forcefully pulled her out and took her into custody. Terror on a Hawaiian tour boat. A lava bomb injured 23 people who were getting a close-up look at the active Kilauea volcano, including a Redlands family. CBS 2's Jeff Nguyen is live in Ontario, who spoke with that family tonight. Jeff.
Pat, this is the practice of an Inland Empire doctor who was on vacation with his family when that lava bomb crashed onto a sightseeing boat. Well, that sent him and his wife moving into action to help an injured passenger while they were separated from their kids.
It looked about the size of 2 basketballs. It was still glowing in the boat.
Tonight over FaceTime from Maui, Dr. Kaming Lee and his family described the lava bomb that smashed through the metal roof of their Hawaiian sightseeing boat. This video captured the sense of terror passengers felt Monday as lava shrapnel fell from Kilauea volcano. Young Christopher tried to dodge the lava by hitting the deck.
I got covered in really hot rocks, and I stayed there for maybe 2 seconds, and it third-degree blistering burns on my legs.
He and his sister Erica were at the front of the boat while their parents were towards the back.
And we really couldn't get to them. There was just total bedlam. There was chaos. And, there was just lava all over the boat.
Mom and Dad had another problem right in front of them. A woman in her 20s had been hit by lava.
It looked like a broken femur.
Dr. Lee is a plastic surgeon who has a practice in Ontario. Earlier in his career, he worked at USC as a trauma surgeon. He later ran the burn unit at an Inland Empire hospital. His wife, Dawn, is a nurse, and the couple managed to improvise to help the injured passenger.
We used one of the cushions to act as a stretcher.
We basically were just calling for jackets to keep her from going into shock and life preservers to stabilize her hip fracture.
The woman with a broken leg was taken to a hospital after the boat got back to shore. The Lees tell us that the captain and his mate wrapped the lava bomb with blankets and jackets and pushed it into the ocean because they feared the molten rock would burn a hole right through that vessel. We are live in Ontario. Jeff Nguyen, CBS 2 News.
What a story. Thank you, Jeff. Now, only on to a heartbroken mother is opening up about her son's murder in South L.A. And CBS 2's Rachel Kim is live in South L.A. with details of a reward. Rachel.
Well, Pat, the South LA father was shot and killed at a very busy shopping center, so there were a lot of people around. Tonight, the LAPD here and the victim's mother are urging witnesses to do the right thing.
Every day, I cannot believe that this is real. I want to wake up and believe that this was a dream.
8 months after her son was shot and killed, Nicole Williams still can't believe he's gone.
I love him so much and I miss him so much.
The LAPD says on November 14, Antonio Maurice Wilson, who everyone called Tony, was one of several people standing in a parking lot at this shopping center on 43rd Street and Vermont. The 27-year-old had just picked up some food and was on his way home when someone walked up and fired shots at the crowd. The shooter then ran back to a car where a driver was waiting. They took off, but Antonio was shot many times. At the hospital, Nicole was at his side.
I asked him several times when he was awake, Tony, do you know who did this to you? What happened? He just kept saying no, he didn't know them.
After 16 days in the hospital, Tony passed away. The LAPD says Tony was an innocent bystander in a shooting that was retaliation against a local rival gang. They believe there were people there who saw the shooter and have information. Nicole is angry they aren't coming forward.
You are being held hostage in your own community. You can become a victim. Your mother, your child, your family member can become a victim of the same people because you're allowing them to still walk the streets.
As Nicole continues her fight for justice, she's had to help Tony's 7-year-old son understand what happened to his father. She hopes a $50,000 reward will help convince someone to speak up.
And stop being concerned about being a snitch. Be concerned about somebody has lost their life.
Again, a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the killer or killers. If you have any information, please call detectives here at LAPD's South Bureau Homicide Division. Reporting live tonight in South LA, Rachel Kim, CBS 2 News.
MGM Resorts International, the owner of the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas, is suing the victims of last October's mass shooting. The complaint says that because of the post-9/11 Safety Act, MGM should not be held liable for deaths and injuries sustained in the attack. The act limits liabilities from mass attacks where services certified by the Department of Homeland Security were deployed. MGM says security at the festival was provided by a certified company. 2,500 people have brought or threatened to bring lawsuits in the wake of that shooting. New reaction tonight from Pasadena Police and the attorney for a mother and daughter who are suing the city for this 2016 traffic stop. They claim the officers fondled them and forced the mother to show her breasts. The department released this dash cam video today to defend their officers.
One officer asked the passenger to lift up her shirt just to expose her waistband to make sure there's no exposed weapons or anything, any anomalies present.
In a statement, the women's attorney alleged the video was edited and does not include body cam video. Pasadena Police called the accusations baseless and said this was before body cameras were worn. Damage control continues tonight for President Trump. He's backtracking from his comments at yesterday's summit with Russian President Putin. CBS 2 political reporter Dave Ryan shows us just what the president is now saying. Dave.
Well, Pat, with the controversy over his Helsinki comments closing in on President Trump, he changed directions today, agreeing with U.S. intelligence leaders that Russia waged a cyber campaign to undermine our democracy, but was still not able to completely snuff out the attacks, even from some Republicans. President Trump tried to clean up his remarks in Helsinki when he sided with Russian President Vladimir Putin over his own intelligence agencies about Russian election meddling.
He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
He now says he misspoke.
I said the word would instead of wouldn't, and the sentence should have been, and I thought it would be maybe a little bit unclear on the transcript or unclear on the actual video. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. Sort of a double negative.
The clarification made things worse. Adding a double negative doesn't add clarity to a sentence, and it certainly didn't add clarity to his explanation.
Some Republicans were relieved that the president at least clarified his misstatement about Russia meddling in the U.S. campaign.
Well, that's what I wish he would have said initially, and I'm glad he said it now.
I take him at his word. If he says he misspoke, absolutely.
But to some folks, that clarification had the same feeling of parsing language and mincing words that came from President Bill Clinton during the Monica Lewinsky scandal when he was being asked if he ever had sexual relations with her.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Yeah. And even while reading his statement today supporting the intelligence community's conclusion that Russia is to blame, well, he ad-libbed this.
Could be other people also. There's a lot of people out there.
Now tonight, Vanity Fair reporting that White House Chief of Staff John Kelly was so irate about the mishandling of this issue that he called Republicans on Capitol Hill and gave them the green light to speak out against President Trump's comments on Russia. And today, both the House Speaker and Senate Majority Leader reassured U.S. allies that America would not roll over for Vladimir Putin. Pat, back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Dave. Well, tonight some are speculating that Queen Elizabeth was sending a hidden message to President Trump with her jewelry. The Queen wore a small green flower brooch on the day the President and the First Lady arrived in the UK. That was a gift from the Obamas. The Queen welcomed the Trumps to Windsor Castle wearing a brooch that her mother wore to a funeral. On the last day of Trump's visit, Queen Elizabeth wore a sapphire snowflake brooch, a gift from Canada, a country Trump has been feuding with. No comment from Buckingham Palace. Can spending too much time on smartphones lead to serious mental issues in children? Well, one study by a team of local researchers say yes, it can. Suzanne Marquez joins us in studio with the details on this. Suzanne.
Well, Pat, we know we're always on our phones.
Yep.
But it's different when it comes to children. They're so impressionable. Now, the study was done by a team of USC scientists and local teens and found children who spend lots of time on digital devices can be twice as likely to show symptoms of ADHD.
Teenagers Kate Grindell and Lola Karadizian say they know they spend too much time on their smartphones.
Do you think you're on your phone too much?
Oh, yes. My dad doesn't like it. Yeah, I should probably be on it less, but it's so fun. Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's highly accessible. These are high performance, very fast, highly stimulating devices.
Dr. Adam Leventhal is professor of preventive medicine and psychology at USC. He and his team did a study to see if teens using their phones excessively, 9 hours a day or more, showed signs of ADHD.
And we studied that in a sample of more than 2,500 Los Angeles area teenagers, and we found indeed, yeah, there was a statistically significant link.
Follow me.
These boys say everyone they know is always on their phone.
I'd say half the day, probably, I'm on my phone, yeah.
No, usually when I'm in class, I'm always on my phone too, so. But I keep on my grades, so I don't think it's a big deal.
Most of my peers will bring out their phones once or twice during class. I'd say, yeah, I do it too, so I'm guilty of it.
Dr. Leventhal says the problem is that parents can be just as bad.
Well, don't use digital media so much in front of them. A lot of us do it, and we don't realize that maybe at the dinner table or in other situations, we're on our device.
He says one way to curb time spent on digital devices is to download apps that track your usage. Pat, back to you.
All right, good report. Thank you, Suzanne. Next at 11, a thief strikes that comes back for more. A local store robbed twice in the same night by the same guy. And parents arrested the couple accused of sending their kids on a Southland crime spree.
And a dog discovered in a parked car on a hot day. Good Samaritans weren't sure exactly what to do. We'll break down the laws here in California.
How many times we say don't do that? Coming up, weather, it's on the way.